Before I knew the truth, I believed love was something you stepped into carefully. Something you learned how to hold without squeezing too tightly. I believed that if you were patient, if you were gentle, if you did not ask for too much, love would stay. That belief did not come from romance. It came from watching my mother survive. There are moments in life when everything you think you know about yourself rearranges quietly. No warning, no dramatic reveal. Just a subtle shift that makes the ground beneath you feel unfamiliar. This is one of those stories. It does not begin with betrayal. It does not begin with desire. It begins with silence that lasted too long. My name is Amara Cole, and the man I was supposed to marry was my brother. I did not know that when I loved him. I did not know that when I trusted him. I did not know that when I imagined a future that finally felt safe. For most of my life, I believed my story was uncomplicated. Not easy, but uncomplicated. A single mother, a quiet childhood, a father shaped like absence. I grew up in South London, in a narrow flat above a bakery on Cold Harbour Lane. The building was old, the stairs uneven, the walls thin enough that you could hear your neighbors' lives through them. Every morning, before my alarm rang, the smell of bread rose through the floorboards. Warm, familiar, steady. That smell taught me what comfort felt like before I had words for it. My mother, Lucia Bennett, used to wake before the sun. I would hear her moving quietly, careful not to wake me. The kettle, the sink, the soft creak of the door as she left for her cleaning job downtown. By the time I woke up, she would already be gone. Lucia never framed her life as a sacrifice. She never told me she gave things up for me. She simply lived in a way that made it clear survival required discipline, silence, endurance. She worked two jobs most of my childhood, offices at dawn, a bridal shop in Brixton in the evenings, where she sewed wedding dresses for women whose joy felt distant and unreal to her. When she came home at night, her fingers were swollen and her shoulders stiff. But her voice was always calm, controlled. She raised me with a quiet sense of order. Everything had a place. Bills were paid on time. Shoes were lined neatly by the door. Emotions were acknowledged but never indulged too deeply. She believed strength lived in restraint. When I asked about my father, which I did only a handful of times, she never lied. She simply gave me half-truths, shaped gently enough to accept. She said he was someone important, someone who had responsibilities he did not know how to step away from. She said he was not cruel, just unavailable. She said some people enter your life to teach you how to endure rather than how to stay. I learned not to ask again. That absence shaped me in ways I did not recognize until much later. I learned how to observe people closely, how to anticipate moods, how to make myself easy to love by not demanding too much. I learned how to leave space for others while shrinking my own needs quietly. By the time I reached adulthood, I believed love should feel careful, balanced, slightly distant. I believed intensity was dangerous and dependency was weakness. Then I met Daniel Whitmore. I was 26, late for a meeting, and already irritated with myself for rushing. London was soaked that afternoon, the rain thick and unrelenting. I ducked into a small independent bookshop near Bloomsbury, mostly to avoid getting any wetter. Daniel was already inside, standing at the counter with a book in his hands. He was speaking to the shop owner in a low voice, pointing out a torn page. He was not angry, just precise, patient. The kind of person who believes fairness matters even when no one else would notice. When he turned, he bumped into me and apologized immediately, too sincerely. He followed me outside to return the umbrella I had dropped without realizing it. We started talking without intention. About books we loved. About how cities can make you feel anonymous even when you are surrounded by people. He told me he grew up in Surrey and moved to London because it felt less controlled. I told him I grew up above a bakery and learned early that comfort and security were not the same thing. There was no spark in the dramatic sense. No rush. Just an ease that surprised me. Daniel listened in a way that made me feel seen without being interrogated. He noticed small things. How I paused before answering personal questions. How I softened when I spoke about my mother. How I deflected praise. He did not try to impress me. He did not overshare. He never rushed intimacy. When he asked for my number, it felt natural rather than bold. We dated slowly, carefully, intentionally. He remembered details I did not realize I had revealed. He brought me books he thought I would like and notes he had written in the margins explaining why. He made space for my mother without making it feel like charity. He never spoke about money. I learned much later that his family owned half the buildings around the street where we first met. Daniel introduced me to his mother, Elizabeth Whitmore, after several months. Their family home sat just outside London, elegant and immaculate in a way that felt curated. Elizabeth was polite. Warm enough to be pleasant. Distant enough to feel protected. She smiled often, but rarely relaxed. Daniel spoke of his father rarely. Richard Whitmore, a billionaire, a public figure, a man known for his philanthropy and vision. Daniel never spoke of him with resentment. Only neutrality, distance. He said his father was always busy. Always traveling. Always somewhere important. Always present in theory and absent in practice. When Daniel told me he loved me, it did not feel like a declaration. It felt like a choice. Like something he had decided with intention. When he proposed, it was in the same bookshop where we met. No audience. No spectacle. Just us. He said he wanted the moment to feel honest rather than impressive. I said yes without hesitation. Wedding planning brings families closer whether they are ready or not. Lucia avoided meeting Daniel's family for as long as she could. She blamed work, fatigue, anxiety. I assumed it was discomfort around wealth. She had always been uneasy around people who lived without counting. The first time she finally met Elizabeth Whitmore, something shifted in the room. A pause that lasted half a second too long, a recognition that neither woman named. Lucia's hands trembled slightly as she accepted a cup of tea. Elizabeth studied her with a look that felt searching rather than curious. As if she were trying to place a memory she wished would stay buried. That night, after we returned home, my mother asked me one question. What is his father's full name? When I told her, her face changed in a way I had never seen before. Not fear, not anger, something closer to resignation. That night, Lucia told me the truth she had carried alone for more than 30 years. Before she was my mother, Lucia Bennett was a housekeeper. She was 19 when she took a live-in position in Knightsbridge. She had grown up in foster care in Leeds, moved through homes that taught her stability was temporary and love was conditional. She believed safety came from obedience, from being useful, from staying invisible. Richard Whitmore was married then, charismatic, powerful, lonely in the way men become when no one challenges them. Their relationship was brief, hidden, unequal, not violent, not romantic, just devastating in its consequences. When Lucia became pregnant, she was dismissed within a week. No explanation given to the staff. A check offered quietly. a suggestion that discretion would be wise. She never saw him again. She changed her surname, raised me alone, built a life where my existence would never inconvenience anyone powerful enough to erase us. As she spoke, I felt something inside me fracture. Not loudly, just enough to permanently alter everything. "Daniel is your brother," she said. The wedding was canceled quietly. No explanations offered publicly. Daniel and I sat on the floor of my flat, surrounded by invitations we would never send. He cried, not for himself, but for the realization that his father had failed both of us long before we ever met. Richard Whitmore requested a meeting. Lucia refused. I met him alone by the Thames. He looked older than his photographs, smaller, like a man whose power had outpaced his humanity. He apologized in words that felt practiced. He spoke of regret, youth mistakes, legacy. I did not ask why he never looked for me. Some answers do not need to be spoken to be understood. Daniel and I parted with grief and grace. Some loves are real but cannot survive truth. Now I live in Brighton, near the sea. I write letters I do not send. I am learning that identity is not inherited. It is chosen. My mother sleeps better now that the truth is spoken. And me. I am no longer waiting for a father to appear. I am becoming my own beginning. If this story felt familiar, if it echoed something unspoken in your own life, know this. You are not responsible for the choices that shaped your beginning, but you are allowed to choose what happens next. Thank you for sitting with this story. If it resonated with you, like this video, subscribe to the Heart's Archive, and share it with someone who might need to feel less alone. Until next time, be gentle with your heart.